Hello, everyone. I have went ahead and unmuted everyone from the webinar. I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation, but we have a small group today. I'm happy to make this an interactive demo. So if you have questions or want to ask anything, let me make sure that I'm making sure that you are able to speak. And so you can ask questions, kind of take this in a direction that you want to see it. Otherwise, I'm happy to walk through this demo of the AttackIQ platform. You see that we have a label here, continuous security validation. A lot of people recognize AttackIQ in the category of BAS, or breach and attack simulation. That is the label that Gartner has put upon this market. And so while we are grateful to have a market and a label, BAS is a methodology. So it's a methodology of obtaining a continuous security validation. So ultimately, what we want to do is answer a question, which is how effective are security controls today? And so let's continuously validate them and ask that question of them and ensure that we are getting the response that we expect out of those security controls throughout the environment. And that is the core of the platform and our company. That's why we were founded. There's a lot of security tools that are out there. They've been deployed, and nobody really had a handle on how effective those tools were or are. And then as you look at data sources like the Verizon DBIR report that cites that out of the all of the different breaches that they investigated, 84% of those breach situations and those companies had a technology that could have prevented that breach from occurring or stopped that campaign. But it either wasn't deployed correctly or some feature functionality of that technology wasn't enabled, thus the breach continued and was effective. So all of that combined says that, hey, we do have a problem. We do have a lot of security controls out there, but we want to understand how effective those tools are, specifically against my expectations of them, but then subsequently, how effective are they against a specific threat? And so our platform is designed to answer both those questions. Let's test security controls, but let's also do threat emulation. Let's play the role of APT29 or FIN6 and run that playbook and see how effective my security controls are specifically at preventing or detecting those behaviors. We're going to be very light on slides today. That was my one intro slide. My next slide here is the architecture. Before I drop you into the demo, I want to lay the groundwork of what I'm about to show you. And so everything does center around that top right object, which is the AttackIQ management platform. It is managed as a SaaS environment from the cloud. There is a flavor of on-prem that can be deployed, but what you'll be seeing today is this SaaS environment where you log into the WebUI via TLS on 443. Everything you see me do can be done via REST API as well. That initial workflow, once you're logged into your tenancy, is to deploy test points or agents, basically. Our methodology of evaluating security controls means that we want to test the production environment. We want to validate that all of these tools that have been deployed out in production, that get patched, get updated, get reconfigured, things move in and out. We want to measure the security posture in that production environment. So let's use production infrastructure as the launch point to do so. Let's look at it the same way an adversary looks at it as they run their campaign. Thus, we have agents that allow us to use existing systems as a launch point, either Windows, Linux, or Mac. So a lot of different flavors supported. We get our test points deployed out there. We launch these adversarial workflows or test cases called scenarios. You'll see on the top left, there's another component to the platform. That is our integration manager. So it's one thing to have this capability of running tests in the environment. So we can emulate the adversary, we can do fun sorts of bad things in production in a harmless manner, specifically designed to trigger some kind of response. But we know that there's a lot of tools that aren't necessarily designed to respond with a block or an interdiction. Their response might be to put an alert on a dashboard that can then feed up through the infrastructure and land on a SOC dashboard somewhere. So we want to be able to exercise those types of security tools as well. The way we do that is by running the workflow that is expected to trigger a response or an alert. But then let's connect to those dashboards. Let's look at that data stream and that alert feed. Using the API of the native technology. So if we're connected into Splunk, we will use the Splunk API. If we're connected into like an endpoint technology like CrowdStrike or SentinelOne, we will use their API. We will obviously run that scenario and then subsequently monitor that alert feed for an alert to show up that matches our behavior. That way we can give attribution to that technology that regardless of the detection status, it did, or prevention status, it did detect and put an alert on a dashboard. So I do see that there's more people that joined halfway through. I'm sorry that hopefully you didn't miss much in the beginning, but I have unmuted everyone. So this is a little bit different webinar format in that it can be interactive. So still kind of a small group today. If you have questions, feel free to jump in and ask. If you're not speaking or have an active question, if you can go on mute, that would be appreciated. So open it up for questions here. Any questions on the architecture before I actually jump into the demo portion? All right, then it is time for the demo. As promised, this is the WebUI. This is the console from which I manage this AttackIQ environment and platform. So as I mentioned, typically that first workflow, once you are logged into the platform, is to deploy agents. I can come into the main menu and find the different installation packages here. So you can see it's a very lightweight agent. It's a single installer package that runs on everything from Windows 7 up to current releases, both desktop and server, 32 or 64-bit. But once again, just speaks to how lightweight this agent is. Once again, all the different operating systems that it supports as well. Once you have agents deployed, then you can review your inventory. How many agents are deployed out there in the environment, see what kind of security technologies might be protecting them, what kind of operating systems you have. You can drill down a level, get more information about the host where this agent is running, and see a little history about what this agent might have been doing lately for you. Probably more fun at this point, once you have active agents checking in, is to give them work to do. Work for us comes in the form of an assessment. And so here you can see a list of various assessments that have been created and executed in this environment. I'm actually going to open up one that has been running for a while called a security controls baseline. So this is the basic core functionality of the platform. And so as I get into the setup portion, I can see that there are two main configuration options here. Configuration option number one, I need somebody to do this work. And so I can see the different agents that are present. If I want to add more agents, then I can see all the active ones and go ahead and associate them with this assessment. But then configuration option number two, which is what kind of work am I assigning here? And so I can see that this assessment is actually broken down by different types of security controls that I could exercise by running this assessment. So I can see that there's 7 scenarios that will test endpoint technology or EDR technology, 6 for antivirus, 6 for content filter, and I can drill down and get more information. So as I look at how to exercise the antivirus, I can see a little bit about what the scenario is going to do. A lot of these scenarios may use actual malware samples for testing. And if I'm going to test some kind of signature-based security tool, then I want to use a file that I know will trigger some kind of response. So I can look at the configuration. In this case, these scenarios have a specific function where they will take this designated sample, stage it in a temp directory, wait some designated amount of time, in this case 3 seconds, then make a copy, and then perform a hash of all of the files, both the original and the 2 files that were written, to see if there was a quarantine or a removal of files, or looking specifically if antivirus interdicted or did something in this test. If we were able to hash the files successfully, then we know there was no interdiction or response, so we will clean up our mess and then move on to the next scenario. But if there was, then we will still clean up our mess and move on with a different outcome. So just an example, and then obviously we have the ICAR files as well, kind of a well-known test of a benign file that's used for antivirus exercises. For endpoint protection and EDR, then you can see just a handful of methods that test the basic functionality of an EDR. So a couple techniques that exercise harvesting credentials. So dumping SAM using volume shadow copy, using a tool, Lasagna tool, to harvest browser credentials. Some discovery workflows using net.exe, persistence through sticky keys. So just a kind of a step-by-step of let's run these workflows and then look for some kind of response. Is this EDR that is on this machine where my agent is going to recognize these workflows, and how is it going to respond? Is it going to block me and stomp on me and stomp on the execution? If so, great. Then we can close out that scenario and move on to the next one. But if not, we'll go ahead and close it out and then continue on and look for some kind of detection using the integration. So you can also see exercising content filter, DLP firewall, so different examples of how we can test those technologies in this very basic assessment. But once this assessment has been established in the setup phase, then I can run it. On demand is one option where I can manually execute this. And then so you can see I can catch the prevention status as well as the detection status here. A common configuration for these types of assessments is to schedule them. So once you've established your baseline, you understand what your security controls are capable of and how they respond. You want to continuously validate that they are responding as expected, that they are putting alerts on dashboards or blocking workflows. And so scheduling, in this case, I'm running it daily, but it could be often as hourly, weekly, monthly. You can manage the frequency or interval at which you're testing your environment. Once you have results, then you can start to dig through that data. And so a couple different ways of rendering the data. First, we have kind of the high-level number sets. So the combined set would be the combination of prevention and detection. So I'm running 28 scenarios on 4 different assets. Overall, how am I doing? And measuring both from a prevention perspective or a detection constitutes some kind of win in my playbook. And then I break them down specifically by prevention, by detection. And then let's look at how I'm doing on these individual tests. So as I'm exercising EDR versus antivirus versus the content filtering. So a lot of different ways to break the numbers down, kind of visualization here. But now I can take it a step further. Let's actually look at how each scenario ran on each endpoint. And so I have this graph view so I can monitor my results over time. But more importantly, probably today, is I have a list of every scenario that ran on every one of these assets or agents in my environment with two different outcomes. First is that prevention outcome. So did some kind of security tool interdict? And then detection. So while a tool may not have actually stepped in and prevented the successful harvesting of credentials in this case, it did see that I did some kind of workflow that merited an alert. And so I can see that CrowdStrike, which is on this endpoint, did create an alert. And because I'm connected both to the CrowdStrike console directly and also into the Splunk feed of CrowdStrike, I can validate that the alert was seen in both places, both on the CrowdStrike console and in Splunk. So I can go through kind of the history of this assessment and see the different results for all of these test cases. If I want to drill down a deeper level, then I can go to the actual execution of this scenario on this endpoint. And so this is the activity details page where I ran this scenario, this endpoint. I have all of his details here, but I have more information specifically around the scenario that was executed. So dumping SAM using volume shadow copy. This is the description. So if people are not familiar with this technique or procedure, we're describing exactly what it is and how we've implemented it here. So the goal here is that customers understand these workflows. They understand how the adversaries are executing their playbook and using their tactics. And so we want to educate customers, and this platform is a great tool for that, providing a lot of details around how the bad guys are doing and accomplishing their mission. We take it one step further and providing access to the source code. So every one of these scenarios that we're executing, we want customers to have access to how we execute. We are not a black box solution that has this magical execution engine on the inside. We're building these Python classes and utilities that emulate the adversarial behavior, and we want customers to be able to crack those open and see exactly what's going on, how these executions are running, because they're running in their production environment against their production security tools. So really break these down, open them up, understand how they work and how your security tools can be tuned to defend against them. So that is one plus. The other positive is that we are an open systems testing tool. So take this example code, these Python classes and utilities that we've built to derive your own. Maybe you implemented your security controls in a different manner, or have something unique in your environment where you want to test it in a certain way that an off-the-shelf kind of commercial platform can't test. Build your own. So take our existing classes and Python, modify it, upload this customized scenario into the platform and run it either instead of or alongside the original, and test your environment and your controls the way you want to. But I've spent a lot of time on this page without actually getting into the results. So as this scenario executes, there is very detailed logging. So we are running some very specific workflows. In this case, dumping SAM using volume shadow copy. I am running PowerShell commands that invoke volume shadow copy for specific areas of the file system. I am running them successfully in this case. Once I invoke volume shadow copy, then I will run subsequent commands to extract two files that are interesting to me. Both of those were successful, so I can remove my volume shadow copy and move on to the next phase, which is, in this case, running mimikatz against them. So what I have, a lot of information. So starting with mitigation recommendations. So if I wanted to prevent this phase of the attack from being successful in my environment, here's some guidance about what I can do next time. We have detection details as we ran queries into CrowdStrike and then into Splunk, which is receiving the CrowdStrike feed. Then I have data and matching data from CrowdStrike for my alert and attack. And then lastly, IOCs. So in the case where I may not have had a detection or an alert from CrowdStrike, we're providing a lot of detail about how we executed, where we executed, and other IOCs that could be used to track down logs in a technology, maybe tune that technology. So the next time they see that execution or workflow, they will respond differently, either by blocking or alerting. And all of these are available on this activity details page. So at this point, looks like I have questions. One question: what is the frequency of vulnerability fix for AttackIQ? So I'm going to interpret that as what is the frequency that we update scenarios or the content, the methods of testing at AttackIQ. And so this is every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks we are pushing out new content, updated methods, and TTPs. And so this scenario library holds the repository of all of this testing content. And if I didn't answer that question correctly, you can please rephrase that question and I'll try and address it later. But you can see that we have over 2,000 scenarios in the library, a lot of different ways to test security controls in an environment or the environment itself. There's a couple views here. This is the card view. We also have the MITRE ATT&CK view. We align very tightly with MITRE ATT&CK, as that is basically the documented adversarial playbook of TTPs, all the different options that an adversary has to really execute when running their campaign and putting together their package in your environment. Broken down by obviously tactic, techniques, sub-techniques, and so you can explore the different options. And so if I'm looking at Windows Shell, then there's a lot of different scenarios that fall into that category. And so you can explore the library in that manner. You can also use filter sets. So if you want to drill down and try and find scenarios that align to a different MITRE ATT&CK tactic or a specific tactic, you can. You can search by named ransomware or malware. You can focus on security controls. So if you want to explore the library in the context of exercising DLP, you can. So I select DLP, and now I'm looking at just scenarios that have some kind of exfiltration component. So I can click on this scenario. This is the basic data exfiltration scenario. I get the description, read about exactly what this scenario is and how it operates. Then I can look at the configuration. So I can customize this scenario. This scenario has an auto-generation tool built into it. So I can auto-generate credit card data on the fly, social security data, personal data in various formats. And this can be built into the configuration. I can make the file size as large as I want, up to 1,000 lines. If I wish to add a level of encryption, I can. A basic XOR, or I can actually use real encryption, or just basic compression, depending on my DLP's capabilities. What I really want to do is validate that my DLP is going to catch this data set that I'm transferring past it. And then the last option is what method. So it could be as simple as an HTTP post or an email attachment, but you could be more covert, break the data down into smaller chunks and pad ping packets, or use DNS A record resolution requests. A lot of different options for setting up your specific method of exfiltration using your data. If you don't want the auto generation, you can actually provide your own. So you know what your triggers are of your DLP, build that data set and that file, and just upload that file to the platform. Now distribute that out to your different endpoints or agents and have them attempt this method of exfiltration. Once this is all built, you have the Save As option where you can build your own exfiltration. This is my demo exfiltration. Once I save it, it now appears in my library. And so tagged is a custom scenario that I've built. Now I can quickly build an assessment, assign this scenario, pre-configured to different agents to attempt this method of exfiltration and test my DLP. Any questions? Once again, everybody is not on mute, so you can jump in, ask questions. If there's any kind of content you want to see in the library or a capability that you would like to explore, I'm happy to field questions right now. All right, in that case, I'm going to bounce back to the assessment. One aspect of the assessment I want to point out is reporting. There is reporting built in, so you can build in reporting into the scheduling. So if you want to automatically generate a report and have it sent every time that assessment runs, that's an option. You can also find those reports pre-built here, so you can go and view the different types of reports that are here. This is the detailed report. This is the more technical version of what happened in this assessment. So as it builds, I can still kind of browse what's going on here, but a lot of different pieces of this report, starting with a summary of this assessment itself. What did I build? How many different scenarios? How many different assets are running this? And then a summary of the results. So from a test case perspective, it's breaking down the data set by the different types of tests I was running. So EDR versus antivirus versus content filter. And I have my overall prevention status and detection status for each. I have high-level pie charts, once again, breaking down those results that way as well. From a mitigation perspective, what we're calling out here is if I want to focus on a specific technology and get the most bang for my buck of how I can resolve a lot of the red that's in my reports, in this case, endpoint protection or antivirus will be the big hitter. And then lastly, going through scenario by scenario with a report card of how effective were the security controls in my environment against these technologies, and then a breakdown, a report card by asset. Lastly is the breakdown by scenario. So exfiltration doesn't have a great description, but a lot of these do have a detailed description, such as the dumping SAM I provided earlier, where we list the scenario, we list the description, exactly what this scenario is and how it executes and why it's important for your environment, but then give you the report card from the perspective of the endpoints where it ran. Then giving you the mitigation recommendations for each one of those endpoints. So designed to be a report that you're handing off to that blue team, that defensive team that's responsible for those security controls. So they get all the information about this assessment, what was being executed in the assessment, the details of execution, and then where these executions occurred, so that they can perform the recommended mitigation. At that point, now you can rerun that assessment and measure the effectiveness of those mitigations. And there's differential reports that can help measure and summarize that activity as well. At this point, any other questions? All right, so um, the goal here was to give you a basic demo of the platform. The one thing that I have left, I think I walked through the first kind of bullet point of my deck, which is let's set up assessments that are designed to test and validate the basic functionality of security controls. The second half of the platform and this demo is around threat modeling. So if I go into the template library, so basically pre-built assessments that align to some kind of testing methodology. In this case, what I want to focus on are operationalized threat analysis. In this case, APTs. I want to emulate the bad guy. So here I can take a pre-built template that has, for the Lazarus group, 39 different scenarios across 9 different test groups that just emulate the documented behaviors of this adversarial group, or potentially using their known package tools. And I'm going to safely run those on the assigned agents and measure the responsive security controls. So you can see Fin 6, Fin 7, a lot of different ways to find an adversarial APT group or create your own. There's an import directly from the MITRE ATT&CK navigator as well. So a lot of ways to get up and running with adversarial behaviors that you can quickly test in your environment. So from here, where can you go? If you're familiar with AttackIQ, you might be familiar with Academy. So we have a lot of free classes in Academy. So teaching how to operationalize the platform, or teaching the basics of BAS. So it could be running purple teaming workflows, running more advanced threat modeling campaigns, or different techniques of testing the different security controls you have. All of those classes are free, so please check it out at academy.attackiq.com, or actually it's a website, academy.attackiq.com. Or if you would like to go deeper into a demo for your organization and ask more detailed questions, we can definitely get deeper into different use cases of using the platform, leveraging the platform to drive business outcomes. And so we're happy to follow up and set up a longer conversation with you. So I do appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining. Hopefully this was educational and you find something about AttackIQ interesting to pursue.